morning, everybody. We're coming to you live from the heart of North Penn High School, the North Penn TV studio, and I am Mrs. Manalo. To my left is Mrs. MacGowan, and to my right is Mr. Daly. You have at your disposal the link to be able to ask questions, and I see the questions are now flooding in. Mr. Daly, would you like to field the first question?
Yeah, so we received a question about the possibility of giving up lunch in order to take a class. The answer is yes, but not at this time. At this time, we need all students to be scheduled between that 6.2 credits to 6.9 credits. When you meet with your individual counselor, again, throughout late February, March, and into April, we can talk about the possibility of skipping lunch in order to take an academic class and what we're going to require to make that happen. So, yes, that is something that we can do, but not at this time. It will be done down the road at your individual meeting with your school counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. And the next question is, how many classes may I course advance?
So course advancing is not a quick, easy answer. You can only course advance in the math department, geometry, and beyond geometry, there's really no other math class that can course advance. So if you have specific course advancement questions, I would suggest waiting until you meet with your counselor with your scheduled course selection meeting, or even emailing us with a specific class or course that you're looking to course advance.
Okay. And the next question we have is for sophomores who took the Life Fitness this year and have 0.9 gym credits, are we allowed to take senior year gym as a junior?
So yes, we realize that there are some students who, for medical reasons or religious reasons, did not take swimming this year, and instead they find themselves taking Lifetime Fitness, or PE 11. Those students, assuming that their religious beliefs or medical issues continue into next year, would again be taking PE 11 or Lifetime Fitness. Only seniors can be scheduled into senior phys ed. So we do realize that there are some students who, for whatever reason, are taking Lifetime Fitness in 10th grade. You will be scheduled into Lifetime Fitness again next year, and you will receive credit for that course again as long as you successfully complete it.
Okay, and Mrs. MacGowan, you wanted to mention tech school.
So we talked about tech school a little bit throughout our meetings with students on Monday and Tuesday. Please only put tech school in your course recommendations for next year if you're currently already going to tech school. If you're looking to apply, you need to stop down at our home office, pick up the application, go through the application process, and once you're accepted into tech school, we as your counselor can add whatever cluster or major over at the tech school you would like us to add into your schedule. So at this point, only if you're currently in the tech school and you want to continue at the tech school, do you put tech school into your schedule. I have a question about overrides. So overrides is something that we're going to hold off on until the end of the third marking period. We're going to give your teachers a little bit more time to see how your learning style and how your grades are within the classroom. We will have a form at the end of the third marking period that you can come down and pick up. If you want to override, for example, if your teacher recommended you for 5.0 English and you want to challenge yourself and take honors English, you would need to, one, either talk to your teacher about changing the recommendation, or two, coming down at the end of the third marking period for an override form. And in order to override a teacher's recommendation, you have to have an 85% average or better.
And back to you, Mr. Daly. The question is about foreign languages. If you already have 6.75 credits scheduled, can you have a foreign language?
So again, the maximum at this point that you can schedule for is 6.9 credits. So at this point, no, an additional elective, for example, world language, could not be added. We need all students to be between 6.2 and 6.9 credits. So if you're already sitting at 6.75, you're going to have to hold until you meet with your individual counselor, at which time we can have a discussion of whether or not it makes sense to add an additional class. So again, think back to our final slide during our presentation on Monday and Tuesday through your English classes, where we had 8 different periods. There's only 8 periods during the day, and at this point, one of them needs to be lunch. So and most of our students are taking English, social studies, math, science. You need a 5th major. Most of our students are also taking health and phys ed. So if we have lunch, you then only have the opportunity to add one other period, which could be a major elective or at least 2 minors.
And back to you, Mrs. McGurman. How many classes can you fit if you skip lunch completely?
So first off, I don't recommend skipping lunch. That is a downtime that all kids need to have in their schedule. If, though, you are choosing to skip lunch, you can add in one more major class. For example, that world language if you want, or you can add in 3 minor classes additionally if you want to skip lunch completely. So going back to what Mr. Daly said in that last slide, it would just be adding 6 more periods into your daily schedule, or I'm sorry, your weekly schedule.
Okay, back to you, Mr. Daly. I'm trying to write your responses as I go. The question is for senior year, early release. How many credits do I need in order to be released early?
So there are some scheduling options for seniors that are unique to seniors, and we need to make sure that you're in good shape in terms of graduation requirements to take advantage of them. So for opportunities like no school period 1 and or no school period 8, students need to have a minimum of 18 credits. Likewise, there's opportunities like concurrent enrollment, where you would go out to a college and take college level work. I believe you need to be at 20 credits to take advantage of that. And there's other opportunities like career exploration and work study. So the bottom line is we need to make sure that you are in good shape in terms of graduation requirements before you start leaving campus to go out and take advantage of those. I know no school period 1 and no school period 8 appeal to seniors. That would also come with a word of caution from the counselors. The only way that we would kind of support that is if the rest of your transcript and the rest of your senior year schedule sends a strong message to a potential college that you are continuing to take things seriously. And I know Mr. Monero would have some strong feelings on this subject because there's so many great opportunities at North Penn where you have the opportunity to take these classes for free. I think that no school period 1 and no school period 8 would warrant a serious conversation with your school counselor during the course selection process next year.
Back to you, Mrs. McGurman. This one is the question, how many deadline for choosing courses, and may I double up in math?
So 2 deadlines that I wanted to mention. The first deadline is that it is Monday, the 3rd at 8 a.m. And that's when your Infinite Campus portal gets turned off to students and parents. And then that's when teachers and counselors kind of take over and start making any recommendation changes and or we start scheduling our appointments. The other question was, is it possible to double up in math? it is possible to double up in math, but the only two courses that you can double up in math on are geometry and algebra 2 you can take concurrently. And if you want to also take AP Stat, you would need to look in the program of studies and make sure that you meet that prerequisite. But you can, for example, double up and take algebra 2 and pre-calculus at the same time. So there are a couple of opportunities you can to double up in math. But again, I would caution that and think ahead and look ahead into senior year that, if it is that AP Stat that you wanted to double up in, that's a great course to take in senior year. But again, if you're within that 6.2 to 6.9 credit range, we can certainly talk about doubling up in math if that is something that you want to do.
And for Mr. Daly, we have a question about APs. How many APs can you take in a given year? What is considered manageable?
So how many AP classes are manageable within a year is really a personal question. I've had students take multiple AP classes in a single year, and it doesn't really seem to faze them. I've had other students take a single AP, and it can be very overwhelming. It's really a personal question, and I think you need to look at how perhaps to balance that, not only with your other academic coursework, but also with your extracurricular activities. And I think, again, it would warrant a conversation with your parents and your school counselor. I think we would want to make sure that it's a reasonable step in terms of scheduling. So if this year, if you're not taking any APs, we would probably want to start out maybe with an AP or 2 next year. I don't think we would want to jump to, say, 4 APs. That might be overwhelming. So we want to make sure that we're taking reasonable steps in terms of balancing out your schedule. And again, it's really a personal decision. I think in my 19 years here, the most I've ever seen a student take, we had one student that by the time she graduated had taken a total of 18 AP classes. She took some of them on her own time. She landed at Princeton. I've had other students graduate with only 1 AP. It's really a personal question for you.
Okay, our next question has to do with 2-semester courses.
So two semester courses, meaning, for example, in our business department, if you take marketing strategies and sports marketing, they're each, you go to that class every single day for 1 semester or half the year. And then the other half of the year, you would take the sports marketing, for example. So it would be 2 half credits equaling 1 total credit. So semester classes only are a 0.5 or a half a credit.
Okay, next question we have. May I take classes at Montgomery County Community College over the summer?
You can. We've had a number of students take classes at Monco over the summer. You can certainly get on their website and see what their academic offerings are over the summer. Again, I would encourage you before you do that to look at your junior year schedule as well as your senior year schedule to see if perhaps instead of taking it over the summer, you can fit it into one of your school years. There is something to be said about taking the time for yourself over the summer. We want you resting, relaxing, and coming back into the school year in September recharged and ready to go.
Okay, and Mrs. McGurman, would I get a parking spot if I registered for gifted mentorship?
So juniors getting a parking spot, as this year, juniors were not able to get a parking spot until the end of, I want to say the end of the first semester. Some of them were given out in December, but I would say do not count on a parking spot if you are registering for gifted mentorship as a junior. That's a variable that I don't have complete information on that, and I think that information will not come out until next year. So as a junior, if you're registering for gifted mentorship, I would say that you're going to have to count on transportation from somewhere other than you driving yourself to school. The other question I had here was on early release instead of study halls. Early release is only available to seniors, and so if you only pick 6.2 credits, then you will have 4 study halls in your schedule per cycle, and those study halls can be variable throughout your day. So you could come in and you could have study halls second period, you could have a lunch study over, your lunch, the lunch periods 4 to 7, or you could have study halls 8th period. So the answer is no early release for juniors.
Thank you, Mrs. McGurman. And back to Mr. Daly about hybrid health.
Okay, so I know as we talked with students earlier in the week, there were a number of students who were taking multiple classes that meet more than 6 times per cycle, and they were finding that it was very challenging to fit health into their schedule next year. So for some students, particularly our high achieving students that are taking honors and AP courses, and students that are pursuing multiple classes that meet more than 6 times per cycle, meaning they have a lab associated with them. We do, in your individual meeting with your counselor, we will have the opportunity to discuss if hybrid health is a good fit for you. So if you can't fit health because you only have 1 period remaining, we might talk about hybrid health, which means you would meet with your health class once per cycle, and instead of meeting a second time, you would complete the work independently. So that's not for everybody, and hybrid health would be discussed at your individual counselor meeting, again, starting in late February.
And back again to Mrs. McGurman. This one has to do with environmental science. The environmental science course, what are the prerequisites?
So environmental science is a new AP course that's available here at North Penn. And the question here is a prerequisite. I would just suggest to take a look at online. We brought that up as the first or second slide during our presentations on Monday and Tuesday. Take a look at each individual course description and take a look at if there are prerequisites that go along with each individual class. So prerequisites, there are prerequisites for many AP classes, and just check that department list or department descriptions to check any classes that you're looking for as far as a prerequisite.
And Mr. Daly, the question that we have is 2 languages at the same time. Is it possible?
Okay. So I actually have 2 questions here. One is, can you take 2 languages at the same time? Yes. We don't have a lot of students do that, but we do have a number of students who are interested in the languages and decide to pursue any combination of 2 different languages. We received another question about the meeting window for individual meetings. Keep in mind, again, each of us have about 350 students that we're going to be trying to meet with on top of our regular job responsibilities. So those are not going to happen within a very quick window. So I think rough timeline, we're starting to meet with kids around February 18th. Roughly, the goal is to meet with about 10 students per day. So that timeline is going to carry through mid-April. At the earliest. So it takes about 2 months to get every student in, to sit with them, to review their transcript, to make sure that they're in good shape with graduation requirements, to discuss future plans, to talk about college admission requirements, whatever the case may be. So again, rough window, February 18th through mid-April is when we're going to be having those individual meetings with students.
So my next question is, what happens if I only choose 1 semester class? That is not a possibility. You must choose 2 semester classes because a semester class, as I had mentioned before, meets every single day for half the year. So you can't just take one semester class. You would have to take 2 semester classes, finish one the first half of the year, and take the other one the second half of the year. I have another question on study halls. Are they a good idea? Study halls are a good idea if you use them wisely. If you use them that you're going to do some homework, have a little bit of downtime. I personally like to have a study hall or 2 in the student schedule, but I think you need to judge that for yourself. If you use it wisely and that you've looked through the program of studies and no other minor classes interest you and you'd rather have that downtime to use that time to study or get caught up on homework. So I personally do like them, but I don't like you to have too many of them in your schedule.
Back to you, Mr. Daly. This one is a question about locked courses.
So at this point, all core classes are locked. So you've been recommended for courses in English, social studies, math, and science. And at this point, those are locked because that is your teacher's recommendation. I know that there were some areas like social studies where we saw students were recommended for AP World and AP Euro. If you know that you have a desire to take one over the other, you can email your counselor and request that one of them be unlocked so that you can get into that desired credit range of 6.2 to 6.9. Likewise, we saw some things in science where a student might have been recommended for multiple lab sciences, and that's putting you over that desired credit range. So again, reaching out to your counselor by way of an email saying, please unlock this course or that course. I can tell you that since we've been meeting with students on Monday and Tuesday, we are experiencing a very, very high volume of phone calls and emails. So if we don't respond to you immediately, don't panic. That's why we have those follow-up meetings scheduled to make sure that everything is in for your course request for next year as you want them to be. So at this point, if it's locked, it's going to remain locked. You can certainly reach out to your counselor if it's because you've been recommended for multiple locked courses.
Hi, and my next class is doubling up on math. Do you need the teacher's recommendation? Again, we kind of had a similar question before on doubling up on math. There are only very few opportunities to double up on math. And I think it's a great place to start is to ask your teacher, your math teacher, if they would recommend that. Have a conversation, make sure what is the purpose of you trying to double up math? Again, only doubling up you could do is geometry and algebra 2, or if you want to add that AP statistics in if you meet the prerequisite. So always start with your math teacher and get their recommendation.
Mr. Daly?
So we have a couple questions here. Mr. Franick is reminding us that there are 3 years of health required for graduation. So most of our students will satisfy that by taking health in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. So there's typically no health required for senior year. There's only 3 years of health. So that's part of the conversation at the individual meeting with your counselor is, as we look ahead to senior year, do we have to use hybrid health to satisfy that requirement? Is health something we can defer until senior year? We want to make sure we're balancing your schedule as best as we can. So for phys ed, 4 years of phys ed is required every year, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. For most students, for all students, 3 years of health is required, and most students satisfy that from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. We also have a question regarding the minimum number of world language requirements for college admission, and that really depends on the college to which you are applying. Most colleges are recommending that you have 2 years of world language. Others, the more selective schools, are going to require 2 years of world language, perhaps even more. So it's really important that you look at the requirements for the schools that you're considering to apply to. And again, this can be dove into a little further at your individual meeting with your counselor.
Mrs. McGowan?
So my question is on prerequisites. Is it possible to bypass a prerequisite? And that's a really quick answer, no. Prerequisites are there for a reason, and you must look at the individual course descriptions to see if there is a prerequisite. There is no way to override or bypass that prerequisite. The other question I have is on science classes. Can you double up in junior year and take 2 science classes? Then can you not take one in senior year? So the question there would be, in senior year, you do have the option of taking math and or science. And that again would be a question that you're going to have with your individual counselor to talk about what your future plans are. If college is in the future, if certain majors are in the future, we could have a very serious conversation talking about going forward into senior year with what the science requirements are.
Mr. Daly, we have a few minutes left. The question is about colleges.
So if I understand the question correctly, a student wants to know, what do colleges want to see? And this could be a very long-winded explanation. I'll try to make it as brief as I can. The first thing colleges are going to want to see is your transcript or your academic grades. Most colleges are going to put the most weight in your classwork and your grades, so your GPA. SATs will also be part of the equation. So your large schools like Penn State, they're going to base 2/3 of their decision on your academic transcript. 1/3 of their decision is going to be based on SATs. They don't really take into account a personal interview or teachers' letters of recommendations. As we move to maybe your more selective schools and your smaller schools, that's where they start to take some other things into consideration. Things like a personal interview, teachers' letters of recommendations, extracurricular activities, things of that nature. But generally put, the most important thing is going to be your grades, which determines your GPA. And the second thing, which is going to be your standardized test scores, like your SAT and your ACT.
And we have room for one more question.
May I be a swim assistant? So the answer to that is yes, but you would be scheduled in 11th grade gym in the beginning of the year. You would have then a conversation with Mr. Franick, who is the head of our health and PE department, and or your PE teacher, to see if there's a need during the periods that you have gyms currently scheduled. And then at that point, we would flip you over and put you as a swim assistant. So I think at this time, we are done. We're out of time. Thank you for the influx of questions. I hope we're able to make your selections easier. Of course, always email us if you have a quick question. Keep in mind that deadline, everything shuts down for you guys on Monday, May 3rd at 8 a.m. So take advantage over the next 3 days to get those courses up to 6.2 to 6.9. And we really look forward to speaking with each of you on an individual basis.
Thank you.
Thanks.